folks. Welcome in the Auburn Undercover Podcast. Nathan King, upcoming birthday boy. I'm just Patrick. Auburn wins 106-76, 30-point win. First half, big run Auburn's way, big run Ole Miss's way. Second half, really just Auburn. They dominated. And of the final four remaining games of this regular season, this was, Pearl said it, this was the one that was most gettable. They got it, and now they go into the big slate, and they are now one win away or an Alabama loss from an SEC regular season championship.
Yeah, it was Jersey night here in Neville Arena, so for our non-visual listeners here, Jameer Nelson, Magic jersey, Trae Young, Atlanta Hawks jersey. It's a little bit of a divisional rivalry going on here, red versus blue. I think it sets up kind of nicely. Bruce Pearl talked about it post-game. He said Dylan Cardwell actually called him on Sunday and said, what can I do to help this team prepare even better? Because they knew just how crucial this game was. There's games like this every single season that feel like a can't lose, and Auburn's not in a can't lose situation at all for any of their hopes for being on the 1 seed line, for winning an SEC championship. However, when you look at Kentucky, at Texas A&M, at home against Alabama, it doesn't get much more difficult in terms of a 3-game stretch. And so unranked Ole Miss at home, a team that you had already beat on the road, felt like you needed to go out there and do it again. And goodness, Auburn certainly did that on the offensive end in this game. So now 198 combined points in 2 meetings against Ole Miss this season. Patrick mentioned it. It was 2 big runs by both teams there in the first half. I thought Auburn was headed toward, now granted they were headed toward a 30-point win, but you could tell early in the game just how much juice this team had. They hit 4 of 4 3-pointers to start the game, 6 of 7 3-pointers to start the game. They didn't miss a shot until 5.5 minutes into the game. They're up by 20, like 7 minutes into the game. It was just a phenomenal start. Credit to Ole Miss for their response. I believe it was an 18-4 run on their part. They're able to bring it down as narrow as 6 points right before halftime. Auburn ends up leading by 10 at the half, and then as Patrick mentioned, the second half avalanche, 56 points for Auburn after the break. And it was Chad Baker-Mazara, we'll talk about him a little bit, was really good in this game. But Patrick, what more can you say at this point about the National Player of the Year candidate front run? It just continues. I think you and I have talked about it before, like maybe Cooper Flagg is the odds-on guy right now, but it felt like if Johni Broome was going to continue to do this against NCAA tournament competition, which Ole Miss is certainly that, his argument was just going to get even stronger. 24-9-4 for him today. 1 rebound short of tying Mike Mitchell for the most double-doubles in a season in Auburn history. But, when he is rolling, it looks like to me, I don't know if you noticed this, that ankle probably getting as close to healthy as it's been, because his first step the last couple of games, like driving baseline, taking guys off the dribble, looks a lot quicker. Auburn is just, we'll touch on the other guys later, Auburn is so tough to beat when Johni is playing that well. And as Bruce said, size matters, and they knew that was going to be a matchup for them in this game.
Yeah, I think you talk about the ankle, like getting to play at home for 3 straight games and them being pretty spread out. It just, especially for the gauntlet you're about to finish with, everyone's getting healthy at the right time. And Johni, he got the 2,500 points. He's the 86th player in D1 to do that. So that's it. And you just talk about National Player of the Year. Like, of course, a lot of people have made the argument about like Cooper Flagg's competition, especially in conference play versus Johni's. And you just think of like the platform and the spectacle that Johni's about to be on these last 3 games.
Sure.
I think all the games are on ESPN. It's like they are all big top 10 or at Kentucky matchups, and so it's like if he can continue to play at this level in those games, it just further solidifies. Like at some point, there's so many stats, it's overwhelming. But you said Chad, he had a great game. The 22 points, that was a season high for him.
Correct.
New hair as well. I think it needs to be mentioned. But overall, I thought the thing that was interesting with Broome is he's got 9 fouls. He got to go to the line and ended up shooting 10 of 12 from the charity stripe, and he almost kind of let out a sigh of relief post game of like, finally.
He pumped both fists when when he was informed that he drew 9 fouls.
Yeah, and so you could just see that and him being able to get in. And I thought something that was interesting. Well, let's actually look. Ole Miss still got to the line. They got to the line, I think, 35 times against Auburn on the road. or when Auburn was on the road in Oxford, which was, I think, the second highest of the season at that point. Tonight, only 31, only knocking down 23 of those shots, so they weren't really able to get to the line as much. And I think this is the first time for Ole Miss, you think of like them trying to play the way of their game. This is the first time they lost the turnover battle all season. And one of the only times that Chris Beard's team has given up 106 points. So, I mean, he said at postgame, it was like, if you had told me my team was going to shoot 50%, I would have liked my chances.
Yeah, Ole Miss, I think, was 47 from the floor, 32 from deep, something to that effect. But, I mean, Auburn was just absolutely overwhelming on the offensive side. Chris Beard said at postgame, he said defense was non-existent, just completely non-existent for them. And I think this Bruce Pearl said at postgame, like, the pieces Auburn has, and is the quote, how special they are is what Bruce said after the game. When they get rolling in this sense and kind of all playing together and letting defense feed to offense, I think as well. Like Ole Miss was able to do a lot of good things in this game, but man, you really just started to feel that energy when I think they had 7 combined blocks and steals in the first half. Auburn did, if I'm not mistaken, and that kind of helped them along their run. You mentioned Chad Baker-Mazara, 22 points, for him, a season high in this game, 4 of 5 from beyond the arc. You could tell he was hunting for a shot right away. He hit the first shot of the game, a step-back 3, turned around, was very, very emotional and fired up. It's been performance-wise, it hasn't been rocky for him at all. He's great. He's probably going to be like a second-team All-SEC guy. But he has been up and down in terms of availability. And there's also been the, frustrations with the technical fouls on his part, him being frustrated about that kind of stuff. And even going into this game, he was a game-time decision in this one. Bruce Pearl shared that he was sick yesterday, had a stomach bug, did not practice at all in Tuesday's practice leading up to this game. He was hooked up to some IVs as early as this morning. And so kind of a gutsy performance for Chad Baker-Mazara. I asked Chris Beard after the game about kind of what impact he gives Auburn on the offensive end. And, again, just touching on the fact that when Broome and Baker-Mazara together have this kind of performance, 46 points, really, really tough to beat. Patrick, you mentioned the SEC championship implications. Let's set the table here for this weekend, since the dust has now settled on the midweek games for the 3 championship contenders. Florida loses to Georgia, so they are now 4 SEC losses, a full 3 games back of Auburn. Alabama takes care of business. Similar performance to this one, just beat the life out of Mississippi State. Not a good week for Mississippi schools in the state of Alabama, apparently. But so going into this weekend, there's a couple different scenarios you can look at. If Auburn, they still control their own destiny. If they go to Lexington and win for the first time since 1988, you did it. You have clinched an SEC regular season title in the toughest conference maybe in the history of the sport. We'll talk later next week about outright stuff, but they can also, if they lose at Kentucky and Alabama loses to Tennessee, they go to Knoxville. If Alabama loses that game, feasibly you could be in a situation where we're done from Rupp Arena, and then like an hour later, the Bama game goes final, and Auburn gets to celebrate after a loss that they've won an SEC championship. And so, obviously, as players talked about after the game, as Bruce Pearl talked about after the game, they want to keep it in their hands. They want to win out the rest of the, going into the month of March. But certainly seems like, again, it's been trending this way all season for Auburn to win an SEC title, and now they're just 1 game away.
Couple of thoughts. Yes, all of that. Going back to chat, how many times has an Auburn player this year been questionable or been hurt and then just dropped 20 points? I think Johni's done it twice. Chad's done it. It's just kind of funny. But, it just sets up. From this point on, in all the games prior to this game, this was quad 1-2 for Auburn. I think the big thing is, from this point on, you are playing the best of the best. And, it is, it's going to be March.
Yep.
And, it's going to be 2 top 10 teams and at Kentucky, and then you're in SEC tournament, and then, you're in the try to win 6 games in 3 weekends.
Yep.
And so, at this point, every game's big, every game's important. And, at this point, with the resume they built, it's just you find a way to win with every game left. Because, at this point, those are 3 really good teams. You really can't get picky. And then it's all tournaments, And so this team's ready for it. I was kind of thinking about this the other week, and obviously a very different makeup to this team than the other 2 I'll reference. But Bruce's 2 other regular season title teams, in a way, kind of faded down the stretch. And they were able to win it, but when they got to the SEC tournament, March Madness, it didn't really fare their way. They were both 1 and done in, Nashville and Tampa for SEC tournament, and then
2 and done,
and then 1 and they lost in the round of 32 in both of the other ones. This team, it just doesn't feel like that. They've been banged up at parts in the season, but they're playing well. when it matters, and from here on out, it matters. And so we'll see what they end up doing. But, I mean, you couldn't really ask for much more, and you couldn't be in a better position if you're a college basketball team.
Yeah, I thought one of the biggest parts about tonight's game was the date on which it occurred. This is your last game going into March. Obviously, anything could happen. Ole Miss is a team where I don't think you can sort of draw some parallels. I'm not saying Ole Miss is going to go on a Final Four run, but like when Auburn went to Kentucky, their Final Four season, they lost by. This sounds like I'm setting up. I'm just sort of saying that. Ole Miss got blasted. Auburn got blasted that season at Kentucky. College basketball not necessarily is a carryover sport. It's more of a sport of like totality. And so for Auburn, they're going to try to capture that. They're going to try to capture that momentum that they had. I thought this game was big for them to feel like they could do it in front of their home crowd, feel like they could shoot the ball well in front of their home crowd. Because let's be honest, their last two games against Arkansas and Georgia, closer than they would have liked. Now, could you say that those were two super desperate teams? Look at what Arkansas did the next game, upsetting Missouri. Look what Georgia did the next game, upsetting Florida. Those were two teams that were just ready to beat somebody, and so you can't knock Auburn too much. You want to give credit to those teams, but Auburn came in here, and like you mentioned, from this game forward, you're playing NCAA tournament teams. I don't think you're going to play a single team from here on out that is not bound for March Madness, and so I thought it was effective for Auburn. Not that they need it. 15 quad one wins. Like, what do they have to prove? Not that they needed this kind of performance, but it was nice for them to go into the month of March saying, we're playing well, like you mentioned, getting healthier, being able to do these things that maybe you had some issues in the three-point shooting at home, that kind of thing. You pretty much just checked every single box in this game, other than maybe letting them shoot 31 free throws. And so very, very complete performance for this team. Couldn't ask for much better heading to Lexington on Saturday.
We'll be there.
We'll see we'll both be there. Really excited.
Just you.
Really? Oh, you're not going to be there?
No, I will not be there. Sorry, everyone.
Do you have a good alibi for that?
Reason? Okay. Well, I am going to just church events. Nothing really exciting.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. You see how I asked you to get on the spot right away at the middle of the podcast?
Look. I had these things previously scheduled.
Auburn takes care of Ole Miss by 30 points. A dominating performance here inside Neville Arena, 106-76. As we mentioned, getting ready on the cusp of potentially winning an SEC championship on Saturday in Lexington. For Patrick Bingham, Nathan King, thank you guys so much for joining us on this edition of the Postgame Pod. Be sure to keep it locked over at auburnundercover.com for all kinds of content Thursday, Friday, and heading into a huge game at Kentucky. We'll talk to you guys later.